Good morning and thank you for staying with us on Sunrise at Sea right here on CTV. Today is 2nd of August 2022 and it's a Tuesday. A beautiful Tuesday, much as it's a lot chilly today. Maybe the weather patterns are actually changing. I mean, the people in Mbale actually have been affected by floods, and yes, it's been raining day in, day out here in Kampala, so we might have to brace ourselves for a cold weather. I don't know, whatever that is that might be coming our way. But joining me today are the ladies on our views. On my far right, that is Shivan Auma, Priva Elibas, and Sarah Apollo. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
It's a chilly morning, but are you happy?
Every time you call my name, or when you call any of us on the set, I feel like doing like this, like hello.
Please, you can. Well, today we are talking about over-communication. Some people actually love over-communication. We actually do have culprits on this panel today. But let me just let you know what over-communication is. Over-communication refers to communicating excessively, simple and clear. Or for other people, they might say that over-communication is communicating more than what is normal or that is considered excessive. Are you that kind of person? If you're in the workplace setting, you find you are the manager or the boss, that is always, you make a communication today, you're emphasizing it at lunchtime, you're emphasizing it later on in the evening, it gets irritating for some people. And also it does come with people who love, to be in control of situations, and people who also feel that they're not understood. If you're the kind of person who feels that maybe your communication was not actually understood, then you might find yourself in a position where you're over communicating. Let's take it to our interpersonal relations. I'm talking about your relationships with your friends, with your loved one, your family, whichever person. You find yourself in a situation where you're over communicating, sharing everything and anything, your feelings, your emotions, how you were bit by, I almost say by a snake, but that is a very rare occurrence. But like, what exactly I mean is when you find yourself in a situation where you are actually revealing a lot of information to people and you are actually doing it over and over again. So for my first question to the ladies today is, do you consider yourself an over communicator?
No, I don't. I really don't consider myself an over communicator because, you say what needs to be said when it needs to be said, and that's it. I don't see the reason or I don't see the rationale behind saying one thing today, then you re-emphasize it at 1 p.m., then re-emphasize it at 5 p.m., then tomorrow morning, then call people up at 1 a.m. I don't see how that, is even real or even practical. But I know that there's people who never shut up, there's people who keep talking and over communicating. But I think I need to somehow draw a distinction between over communicating and over sharing.
Yeah.
Or over explaining. Yeah, I think we need to draw a distinction somewhere in there. Because when you posed that question, I wasn't sure whether I should jump in, because I'm one person. I wouldn't say I over communicate, but I would like to overly explain to make sure I am not quoted right. I would rather explain than being misquoted. So I found myself in situations where I over explain. So if maybe that falls under over communication, then you'll definitely say I over communicate, especially when it comes to issues either as such in relation to either a job. I will make sure I overly communicate so that I am got right. If I'm going to be away, I will continue reminding and saying, you know what, I'm actually going for leave. I'm going for leave, so that you do not forget that I'm going for leave. So
is coming up.
That my leave is coming up. So I think when it comes to certain scenarios in my life, when it involves me, I'm that one person who find myself overly communicating, so that at the end of the day, I am not held accountable that I did not do my part. So I would rather overly communicate.
You're basically being transparent.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And also, avoiding being misquoted, because, you'd rather play it safe.
Okay.
For me, the difference between over-communication and oversharing is over-communication, you're repeating the same message over and over again. It's a simple message, but then you're continuing to repeat it again. Say, for instance, if there's an event and you're getting together with your girls on Saturday, on Monday, don't forget, you people, you'll be there. Tuesday, same message. Wednesday, that is over-communicating. Whereas oversharing is when you share personal, sensitive information about yourself, about things that are happening in your life. And you could be oversharing to, loved ones, people or just to complete utter strangers. So there's a difference. I can be an oversharer sometimes. especially when I am feeling a certain type of way. I can become an oversharer, especially to people who I trust will be able to take in this information. Whereas being an over communicator, no, I'm not. I say it one time and I expect everybody to be competent enough to be able to interpret it, to play your part, do your job. You're going to come on Saturday, you're either coming or you're not coming. I said it once, I hope you got it. I'm not an over communicator. For me, it's very simple. I don't have to explain. If you do not understand, ask for clarity. I'm going to say it one time and that is it. So I don't over communicate. Even in the work setting, I'm going to say it one time and that is it.
Okay, well, for me, I'm neither an over communicator nor am I an oversharer. For me, I'll just say something one time. And I feel like people should be able to understand, because the thing about me is I don't want to feel like I'm imposing. I don't want to feel like really I'm trying so hard. So if I say something one time, it should be understood, right? That clear. But anyway, let's look at the reasons. Why do people over communicate, or why do people find themselves in situations where they're over communicating?
Well, they want to be, one, transparent. Number two, they want to make sure that the message is very clear to everybody and that they understand. And also, some people could just have a tendency of wanting to make sure that, as in, they are perfectionists. So they want to make sure that everybody has understood the assignment, and they just want to be able to completely control the narrative. Other times people over communicate because perhaps there was an incident in the past where they may have communicated but not adequately enough.
Okay.
Why people over communicate? One, I would answer as to why I do it. I think it depends, first of all, to who I'm communicating to. Now, we know our people. There are circles of friends or circles of people that you be with, and you know that this one, if you do not repeat this communication more than once, they're most likely going to miss your birthday party, or they are most likely going to miss an appointment. So depending on what category or the kind of individual that you're communicating to, I think then that's when the aspect of over communication comes in. But there's something Sarah mentioned, and it comes from a previous situation, especially if you've been caught in a predicament where you once said something and you were misquoted and it was devastating for you. So you play it safe and you make sure that you overly communicate rather than ending up in the same predicament that you were once in.
Okay.
I know it's actually better to over communicate than under communicate, but just to, you know, give my reasons as to why I think people actually over communicate, especially for like bosses. They do so because maybe they want to show like some bit of, you know, appreciation for their employees, and maybe they don't like say it often. So you find like the only way you're going to get your team up and running and, you know, giving them that push and that confidence is you constantly letting them know that, you know, you see them, you know, you appreciate them, and, you know, you see the good work that they're actually doing. So I think for different reasons, people over communicate for different reasons. For me, like just have explained it, in a working space, in a work setting, bosses do those things because they want to appreciate their people a little bit more. And also there's some, still speaking like in the workspace, I feel like bosses actually do still over communicate, because sometimes when you leave things up to your employees to just do them, it becomes a little bit too risky. You understand? I know we all hate micromanagement and all those things, but sometimes it's important that your employers keep checking in and keep checking in and keep checking in, so that, you know, they can track the progress of a certain project or, you know, something. So yeah,
the other aspect, and she talked about workplace, but I would like to look at it in the aspect of a relationship. Why people over communicate? It could come from an aspect of either fear. You know, you do not want to leave out any key detail because you fear either your spouse or your partner will land on this information and then you will appear as a traitor. So you would rather tell him, you know, at 2:45 I took a cup of tea. At 8:15 I was having. There are actually people who do that kind of thing. But I think also in a way it becomes very toxic, especially if you find yourself in areas where you constantly have to over communicate to your partner. For me, when it comes in that aspect of over communication in a relationship, then it becomes toxic, because why do you feel the need to overly communicate, tell your partner what you've eaten, what you're dressed up in, what shoes you're wearing.
They talk about relationships are about transparency, right? And if you're being transparent with your partner, then you literally have to tell them
But don't you
everything.
think there's a difference between being transparent and doing over communication? And why are you doing it? Are you scared that you do not want your partner to think that you're misbehaving? What is the reason? Are you really being transparent?
Now you're taking us back to relationship identity crisis.
No, I think sometimes people, when you find yourself in a situation where you have to over communicate the same message, it could be because there is a bit of reluctancy on the other person to execute or do their part. For example, let's get away from the workplace. Let's talk about our children. When you want your child to carry out their chores or do their homework or do something like, for instance, eat your vegetables, many times they don't want to do that. They're reluctant to do that. So you find yourself in a situation where you have to over communicate and remind them, did you bathe? Did you do your homework? You're over communicating because on the child's part, they don't see it as something that is fun. They don't see it as something that is necessary. They see it as something that can be postponed. So you find yourself over communicating it. And let's bring it back to the workplace. I think sometimes when employers or supervisors have to over communicate and keep repeating the same message is because their employees or people who work under them are reluctant to get the job done because one, they're either procrastinators, they're either lazy, they either have no interest in completing that task. So you find yourself having to repeat, you people remember the deadline is on this day, the deadline is on this day. So you keep on, because there's a laxity on the other party.
Okay, now what everything you have said, ladies, is actually more in line of, like, when people are over communicating, they're coming from a good place.
Yes.
But let's look at what over communication actually says about you as an individual. Now, one of them, it says that you can't put together a clear and concise thought.
That's
like, you
also
really
possible.
have to over communicate for people to understand your thoughts, to understand your feelings, or whatever you're trying to communicate. The other one is that you don't have to buy in from the group or person that you're trying to communicate with. So you keep communicating and hoping that you will buy in. And also on the other side, this is to say that I'm going to keep talking until you have to cave into my way of thinking. You're that kind of narcissist person, whereby if you communicate something, you have to communicate and say it over and over again so that it sticks into people's heads, because you know what? You want them to buy in your way of how you want things to be done, in your way of thinking. I'll give you an example of someone like Kanye West. He's that kind of person. The other one is that you don't value...
No. Kanye West is like borderline delusional, but I love it. You know? I love it. There's no... If I were to have that amount of self-esteem...
In the interest of time, it also means that you don't value other people's time. Come on. Sometimes... Okay, let's put it in the workplace setting. Okay. You've called a meeting in the morning, communicated something. You've called another one in the afternoon, said the same thing. Called another one in the evening, said the same thing. You're actually wasting people's time. Communicate once, make sure you're precise and concise, and people will be able to understand what you are saying.
But also, as a team leader, it shows that you're literally telling your team that you're incompetent. Because if you're continuously communicating the same thing to the, like, you call for a meeting at 8, you call for a meeting at 10.
And communicating the same thing.
But that wouldn't be the case if the team would just do
Get
the
the
work
done.
done.
But sometimes you have to you have to give them time. What if they were doing, they had other responsibilities during that time. But they have it at the back of their mind that they're actually going to still do what you've communicated. The other one is that you don't know your audience. The moment you do not know your audience, you'll find yourself in a space where you're over communicating because you feel like people still do not understand what you're saying. The other one is that what you have to say is more important than what others have to say or believe. That is where you find yourself in a situation where you're communicating and not listening to what other people have to say. And the other one is that you like to hear yourself talk. There's people who are really all about themselves, people who are very egoistic. Yes.
Record the voice note and listen. Why are you communicating?
So that you listen to yourself and how you are communicating to other people. But let's briefly talk about, the advantages of communicating, of overly communicating. Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is that you're not misunderstood. Your communication is very clear. So chances of being either misunderstood or being misquoted are very low. That's the first benefit of overly communicating.
Okay.
Like Priva said, it's better to over communicate than to under communicate, because when you over communicate, then you are not leaving any stone unturned. So that right there is an advantage in its case.
Priva Elibers.
I feel like it's all about transparency. You're being transparent, and you're leaving no room for any person to say, you know, I never had that communication, or I did not receive that kind of communication from you. So for me, it's more of, you know, being transparent. That's why people actually over communicate, and those are the advantages of over communicating. But I also feel like there's a way like you can never over communicate. Like, it's not a bad thing as under communicating.
Do you think that over communication actually creates dysfunctional relationships? Like people could actually get irritated or tired. It can actually be your partner, and they feel like
that's why I brought up the
have their
aspect of
personal
relationships.
things that are going on, and you are the one constantly communicating, saying something. You're not giving them room to think about them, or to even think about what you're telling them.
You see, this is the thing about communication. It's a two-way street. It's open-ended, so there is room for discussion. So if you find yourself in a place where you are getting tired of your person over communicating, then perhaps you are not reciprocating. Perhaps you are not doing what it is that they expect you to do. So if you are in a healthy two-way communication dynamic of a relationship, it's never going to be exhausting. It's something that you're always going to work up and explain. So for instance, if your partner says, I don't like it when you do this, and you listen and you take in that information and you stop doing those things, they're not going to come and repeat themselves. Do you understand? So it becomes only tedious and exhausting and frustrating when you are not paying attention. So for instance, if your wife or girlfriend keeps on saying that, when you wear your clothes and the dirty ones, put them in the laundry basket, and every time she comes, she finds them on the bathroom floor or on the bed or in the kitchen, and she's going to keep on repeating herself. She's going to keep on repeating herself, put them in the laundry basket, put them in the laundry basket, put them. Then you are going to get frustrated with her repeating that and think that maybe she is, you know, undermining you. But the thing is that you have still not understood the assignment. Just put it in the laundry basket,
and we won't have to talk about it ever again.
A renowned therapist and counselor, and he's actually a marriage counselor, talked about, she was actually explaining, you know, sometimes during her sessions when she's counseling rather partners, and he said that sometimes she finds that one or both partners get into patterns of over communicating, where they are sharing all their feelings and thoughts about themselves and their partner and their life as well. And he says telling your partner everything you think, feel, and want is not necessarily a healthy communication style. You might call it transparency, but it's not healthy. Now, your partner may feel unable to meet your demands, to meet all your needs, because they also have themselves to actually take care of. So you need to be patient with your people. While you're over communicating, you should know that they also have their needs.
Exactly. But again, for me, and I disagree with that, you still have to communicate. You still have to. It's a two-way thing. If your partner says, I don't like that you're doing this, then you say, okay, how can I stop? How can I be better? How can we find a way to work around it? How can we find a mutual ground so that we are both comfortable? The thing is that, and the dynamic in relationships is that women, we're a lot more emotional. We're a lot more in tune with our emotions. We're a lot more open to sharing. While men on the other side are closed off. So they find themselves always being the one to take in the information and not give back. But it's again a two-way street. I won't have to over communicate if you understood me the first time and stopped doing it or did it right.
Okay,
we've debated about it.
All right, as we wind up the conversation, we have a few minutes left. Just briefly, let me tell you the advantages of over communicating. It eradicates assumptions and ensures clarity. Over communication keeps important information top of the mind. Over communication ensures everyone is on the same page. Over communication is necessary when roles, responsibilities, and accountability are unclear. The other one is over communication goes a long way in preventing conflict and misunderstandings. And finally, when in doubt, over communication comes in handy. And that is all we had for you in this segment of Our Views. This is Sunrise at Sea. Don't blink.
Well, like the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. Today is the 2nd of August. Yesterday was the 1st. I hope that you are excited that you are getting into a new month and you have set month resolutions. If you must change your friends or change your contact list, a new month is actually a beautiful way to start with. Otherwise, from the team and I, and of course the team behind the scenes, wish you a lovely, lovely day. Do not forget, at exactly 11 a.m. we shall have the mid-morning party, and that is a brunch request with Team Cash. Don't blink.